It's funny how quickly your life can turn upside down, how a single conversation can unravel years of what you thought was normal. But that's what happened to me. And trust me, this isn't some typical heartbroken husband gets betrayed story. No, it's something much stranger than that. It all started the day Eliza dropped a glass. I'm not even exaggerating. It was a stupid, small thing, but it set off a chain reaction that spiraled out of control. We were in the kitchen, both of us half-heartedly making dinner. I was stirring the pasta, and she was cutting up some vegetables. The kind of mundane thing couples do, day after day. But then she reached for a glass on the counter, and as her fingers brushed it, it slipped. Time seemed to slow down as the glass fell, hit the counter, and shattered into 1,000 little pieces on the floor. She didn't scream. She didn't even curse. Eliza just stared at it, as if the shattered glass were more than just a broken object. She stood there for a long time, silent, frozen, looking at the mess she had made. And that's when I knew something was off. You don't just stand there over a broken glass unless there's something deeper going on. I bent down, starting to pick up the pieces. It's just a glass, Eliza. I'll clean it up. But she didn't respond. She didn't move, didn't even look at me. Instead, she kept staring at the shards on the floor, her eyes wide, but empty, like she wasn't really seeing anything at all. Is everything okay? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. But I could feel a tension building in the pit of my stomach, something I couldn't explain, like the calm before a storm. I think we need to talk, she said, still not looking at me. Her voice was soft, almost detached. It wasn't the voice I was used to hearing from her. It was flat. And in that moment, my mind raced, because I knew what was coming. There are moments in life, quiet moments, where you feel the universe shift ever so slightly. You feel it in your bones, like a warning. This was one of those moments. The kind of moment you'd later look back on and realize that everything before it was just the calm before the inevitable. I set the broken glass aside, stood up, and walked over to her. What do you want to talk about? She looked at me then, and I swear it was like I was seeing her for the first time. Not in the way a person usually sees their spouse, but in a way that made everything feel strange, unfamiliar. I don't think I want this anymore, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I had to have heard her wrong. What do you mean? I mean, she paused, biting her lip. I don't think I want to be married anymore. The words hung in the air like smoke, dense and suffocating. I thought I might choke on them. I had heard people talk about this sort of thing before, the wife who wanted out, the husband blindsided by the news. But I never thought it would happen to me. And yet, here we were. It wasn't like we had been perfect, far from it. But divorce? That felt so final, so absolute. There had been arguments, sure. She was distant sometimes, and I'd been caught up in work. But no one had ever mentioned divorce. Not like this. Are you serious? I asked, the words coming out of my mouth before I could stop them. She nodded. I don't want to go through this anymore. It's like we're just going through the motions, Andy. We've been living separate lives for so long, and I can't keep pretending it's okay. I stood there for a moment, trying to process it. Trying to understand what had just happened. How had we reached this point? How had we gotten here without me even realizing it? But then, strangely, I felt a calmness wash over me. Not sadness, not anger, just a quiet sort of acceptance. It was like I had been waiting for this moment, even if I didn't know it. So that's it? I asked, my voice steady, even though my mind was racing. You've just decided this is over? I've thought about it for a long time, she said, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Regret? Relief? I couldn't tell. I don't know what happened next. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand answers, to try to save whatever was left of us. But another part of me just didn't care. I knew that if she had come to this conclusion, then she had made up her mind. There was nothing I could say to change it. So what happens now? I asked, trying to sound more curious than devastated. She blinked a few times, almost like she was waiting for me to say something else. But I didn't. I don't know, she said, a sad smile crossing her face. Maybe we'll figure it out. But I think we need some space. I think we need a break. And just like that, the words were out. A break. Space. And I was left standing there, staring at the shattered glass on the floor, wondering how I'd ended up here. The days that followed Eliza's words felt like they were wrapped in a thick fog. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't concentrate on anything. I went to work, sat at my desk, and smiled when I had to, but my mind was constantly replaying that conversation in the kitchen. I think we need to talk. I don't think I want this anymore. The words echoed in my head like a song stuck on repeat, and it wasn't the good kind of song. But here's the thing. I wasn't angry. Not in the way I thought I would be. In fact, it was strange. I was numb. I wanted to scream, sure, but I just didn't. It was as if a part of me had already accepted the inevitable. Maybe I'd been blind to it before, or maybe I just didn't want to see it, but this was happening, and I couldn't change it. That evening, after dinner, Eliza and I didn't speak much. We didn't have to. She'd made up her mind, and I had decided not to fight it. I thought about it, about how easily I had let her slip away. I'd always thought I was the one who would leave first. She had been distant for months, emotionally checked out, perhaps, but I never imagined it would be her. She had been different lately. There was a coldness to her that I couldn't ignore, and I thought that maybe if I tried harder, she'd come around. But now I saw the truth. She didn't want me anymore. And oddly enough, that truth didn't break me. It did the opposite. It made something inside of me stronger. The next few days were a blur. Eliza and I didn't talk much. We went through the motions of living together, but were living completely separate lives under the same roof. It was like we were strangers, cohabiting in a house that had once been filled with love, laughter, and warmth. But now it felt cold, barren. I started to think more clearly during this time. The quiet desperation she had in her eyes when she made the request, it stuck with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Eliza wasn't just making a decision to leave me. She was giving up on herself. Maybe she thought she was doing me a favor, letting me off the hook so I wouldn't have to deal with her anymore. But I wasn't so sure. I began to wonder if she was running from something deeper than just our relationship. But I wasn't in a rush to figure that out. Not yet. One evening, after Eliza had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the TV, but not really watching it. My mind was too busy. I started thinking about what I wanted. And the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. I wanted control back. I wanted to take back my life. I wanted to make sure this didn't end with me as the victim, the one left behind to pick up the pieces. No. If she thought she could walk away from this marriage without any consequences, then she had another thing coming. I couldn't just let it happen. I couldn't let her make that decision for me. She wanted a break? Fine. But it wouldn't be on her terms. I wasn't going to beg her. But I wasn't going to roll over, either. So, I did what any rational man would do in a situation like this. I started planning. The next day, I took a sick day. I didn't feel sick, but I knew I needed a break from the routine, from the numbness that had crept into my life. I had to start thinking clearly. I spent the whole day going over everything. Our finances, her work schedule, our daily habits, and something clicked. I started making moves, setting things in motion. The way she had pulled the rug out from under me, so unexpectedly, had thrown me off balance, but now I saw things differently. I had the upper hand. I wasn't the one being discarded. The next few weeks went by in a blur, but my plan was starting to take shape. Eliza, on the other hand, seemed more and more like a ghost. She didn't seem to notice my subtle shift. She was still walking around like she had everything figured out, like she was the one who was done, while I was left to pick up the pieces of a broken marriage. But then, one night, something happened. It was a Friday, just like any other. I came home late from work, tired, but when I walked into the kitchen, I saw her standing there. Eliza was staring at the fridge, her fingers tracing the edges of the magnets that lined the door. It was a simple thing, but it felt loaded with meaning. "Andy," she said, her voice almost shaky, "I've been thinking." I leaned against the doorframe, my heart pounding in my chest. About what? She turned to face me, her eyes full of something I couldn't quite read. Maybe I made a mistake. Those words, they hit me harder than I ever expected. Not because I wanted her to regret it. Far from it. But because I realized that this was it. This was the moment. This was the moment when everything could change. I had played my cards right. I hadn't begged. I hadn't tried to fix things immediately. I gave her space. I let her think she was in control, all while I started building my own life again, one where I wasn't at her mercy. "I think you've had time to think, Eliza," I said, keeping my voice even. "But you need to understand something. This isn't something you can just undo. I'm not going to wait around for you to figure things out. If you want me in your life, you need to show me that it's worth it." She looked at me, her eyes wide, searching for something in my face that maybe she had forgotten. I could see it now, her regret. The realization was dawning on her that she had made a choice, but the consequences hadn't hit her until now. And that, I knew, was the beginning of the end. I never expected to be here, standing at this crossroads, with everything I thought I knew about my life unraveling around me. But as much as Eliza thought she had made the decision for both of us, I realized I had a power of my own. And it wasn't the kind of power she could see right away. It was quiet, patient, and cunning. A power that waited for the right moment to reveal itself. She had made her decision, and at first, it felt like a crushing blow. I'm not going to pretend that the idea of losing her didn't hit me hard, because it did. But somewhere, buried deep inside, a fire started to burn. I wasn't going to be the one who simply rolled over. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this marriage, from us, without consequences. She thought she was the one making the call, but she had no idea what was about to unfold. The following week was a blur. I could tell Eliza was starting to second-guess her decision. The way she would look at me when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the way her voice would shake when we spoke. She was trying to stay composed, but I could see the cracks. She was regretting her choice, but she wasn't going to admit it. Not yet, at least. I didn't rush to confront her. I didn't need to. I let her live with her decision. Let her experience the consequences of her actions. Because deep down, I knew she wasn't ready for what I was about to do. It was on a Thursday evening when the first thread of my plan started to tighten. I had been biding my time, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Eliza had become more distant, withdrawn. She still came home at night, but she no longer seemed like the woman I had married. I started wondering if I ever really knew her at all. Had I been living in some fantasy, some idealized version of her that never really existed? I decided it was time to act. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. If Eliza wanted to play the game of distance, of emotional withdrawal, I would give her a taste of her own medicine. I knew how this worked. I knew what to do, and I wasn't going to back down now. The first thing I did was to change how I treated her. It wasn't anything drastic at first, but subtle enough that she'd notice. I stopped initiating conversations. I stopped asking how her day had been. I didn't ignore her completely, but I gave her the space she seemed to crave. I started focusing on myself, on the things I had neglected for too long. I went out more, reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies. I started to rebuild the parts of myself that had been swallowed by the marriage. At first, Eliza didn't say anything, but I could see the way she was watching me. Her eyes, filled with a mix of curiosity and something else, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. She was starting to notice the shift in me. She was beginning to realize that I wasn't waiting around for her to come back. One evening, after a particularly quiet dinner, Eliza finally spoke. "What's going on, Andy?" she asked, her voice hesitant. "Why are you acting so different? You don't seem, I don't know, like you care anymore." I looked up at her, feigning surprise, but inside, I was smiling. This was exactly what I wanted. "I'm just focusing on myself," I said calmly, as though it was the most normal thing in the world. "You know, getting back to who I was before, everything changed." I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words hang in the air. I don't think it's healthy for either of us to keep pretending things are fine when they're not. Her eyes widened, and I could see the panic start to creep in. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice small, fragile. "Are you saying you're just giving up on us?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took my time, enjoying the look on her face. The realization was dawning on her now. She had been the one to pull away, to distance herself from me. But now that I was doing the same thing, the tables were turning. It wasn't about being vindictive. It was about showing her what it felt like to have the roles reversed. "I think we both need space, Eliza," I said, my voice steady. "We've been living like this for a while now, and it's only getting worse. Maybe some time apart will give us both clarity." I didn't add that I was certain she wouldn't be the one to ask for that space. I knew she'd never take that step on her own. But the idea of it, of me being the one to suggest it, would gnaw at her. I was giving her the opportunity to face her own choices head-on. She looked at me for a long time, her eyes searching mine as though she was looking for some sign that this was a joke, that I wasn't really this person, this cold stranger. But the longer she stared, the more she realized I was serious. And that's when the panic truly set in. "You're really serious about this?" she whispered, almost as if she were afraid to hear the answer. I nodded, but I didn't say anything else. I didn't have to. The silence between us spoke louder than any words ever could. The next few days were tense, more so than I could have imagined. Eliza started talking less, retreating even further into herself. She would come home late, and when she did, she would avoid eye contact, as though the weight of everything she had done was finally catching up with her. I could see it in the way she walked around the house, her shoulders hunched, her gaze constantly shifting. It was clear she didn't know what to do anymore. And that, I realized, was the moment I had been waiting for. It was the quiet that unsettled me the most. The silence that stretched between Eliza and me in the days following my shift in behavior. It was as if we were both living in parallel worlds, each existing within the same house, but not really there anymore. She stopped initiating conversation altogether, and I followed suit. We still shared a bed, still ate at the same table, but the intimacy, the connection we once had completely vanished. I didn't mind at first. I had a plan, after all. The longer she avoided me, the longer she stayed distant, the more I knew she was regretting her decision to ask for a divorce. She was unraveling, slowly, and I could feel the shift in her energy. She was starting to miss me, starting to realize that the life she was trying to create without me was not as simple as she'd thought. She hadn't even begun to grasp what a mistake it was to ask for space, for a break. I, however, was enjoying every minute of it. Watching her struggle without even lifting a finger, feeling in control for the first time in years, it was intoxicating. Then, the cracks started to show. It happened on a Wednesday night, after we'd both returned home from work. She'd spent the evening locked in her study, working late, avoiding me. I could hear the sound of her typing away on her laptop in the next room, her mind still preoccupied with whatever it was she was trying to escape. I wasn't exactly sure what she was working on, but it didn't matter. It was the same pattern as before, her retreating into her work when things got tough. She had always done that. The difference now was that I wasn't sitting idly by, waiting for her to come back. I was in the living room, reading, when I heard her footsteps approaching. She didn't knock on the doorframe like she normally did when she wanted to talk. No, this time, she just appeared in the doorway, standing there, watching me. I looked up at her, trying to appear unaffected, though my heart rate picked up. I could sense something was different in the air. Something had shifted. "Andy," she began, her voice low and hesitant. "We need to talk." I set my book down slowly, meeting her gaze. "About what?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. She paused, clearly weighing her words. I could see her struggle, the hesitation in her eyes. She wanted something from me, something I wasn't sure I was willing to give. For a moment, I wondered if she was going to ask me to fix things, to beg her to stay. But I wasn't about to make it that easy for her. "I've been thinking," she started, her voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I rushed into this. I think I made a mistake." I didn't react immediately, not wanting to give her the satisfaction of seeing how her words might affect me. Instead, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was coming next. "What exactly are you trying to say, Eliza?" She took a step closer to me, her eyes searching mine. I could see the desperation in them, the crack in her facade. She had let the wall come down for just a moment, but I wasn't sure she even realized it. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said softly, the words hanging in the air. "I don't know if I'm ready to walk away from us." I stood up then, taking my time, walking slowly toward her. I wanted to take this moment, this fragile, fleeting moment of vulnerability, and turn it to my advantage. She was searching for an answer from me, waiting for me to tell her what I thought, what I felt. But I wasn't going to give her that. I wasn't going to make it easy. I had given her space, given her time to think, but now it was time to make her feel the weight of the decision she had tried to make for both of us. "I think you need to figure out what you want, Eliza," I said, my voice firm but calm. "Because I'm not here to play games anymore. You can't just keep coming back when it's convenient for you. This isn't some on and off thing. Either you want to fix this, or you don't." The words stung more than I wanted to admit, but I had to let her know that I wasn't just sitting here, waiting for her to come back to me. If she wanted me, she would have to prove it. She wasn't the only one who had the power to make decisions anymore. Her face faltered, and I could see a flicker of uncertainty cross her expression. "But I don't know what I want," she whispered, almost to herself. "I don't know if I can make the right decision anymore." "Then maybe it's time you figured that out," I said, stepping away from her. "I'm not going to wait around for you to come to some conclusion. You have to make your choice." She stood there for a long time, not moving, as if processing my words. as if deciding whether she was going to give in to the uncertainty she was feeling or fight for what she wanted. It was obvious now that the tables had turned. She was the one who was unsure, not me. I was steady, grounded in my own decision. She didn't know what was coming, but I could feel it. The pull towards something new, something that would push us both to the breaking point. "I don't know what to do, Andy," she finally said, her voice small. "You don't have to know right now," I replied, walking toward the door. "But don't think you can just waltz back in here whenever it suits you. This is my life too, Eliza, and I'm not just sitting around for you to make up your mind." I left her standing there, staring after me, as I walked into the other room. The silence that followed felt heavy, thick with the weight of the unspoken words that hung between us. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what came next, but I knew I was finally in control. It was no longer about saving a marriage. It was about saving myself. The next few days after that conversation were quiet, but there was a tension in the air that I couldn't ignore. It was as if we were both walking on eggshells, trying not to provoke something that neither of us wanted to face. Eliza, however, wasn't as composed as she had tried to appear. I could see it in the small things, the way her eyes would flicker to me whenever we passed in the hall, the way she hesitated when I wasn't home on time, as if waiting for me to reappear and give her some kind of reassurance. It wasn't the same calm detachment she had shown when she first suggested the divorce. No, this time, she seemed lost. I didn't have to say much. She had already made her choice to leave, but now, she was second-guessing it, unsure about what life would be like without me. The difference between the woman who asked for space and the woman standing in front of me now was stark. Eliza was questioning everything. The future, her decisions, her own desires. What she didn't know, however, was that I had been waiting for this exact moment. This moment when her walls would come down, when she would finally realize that the distance she had created between us wasn't just pushing me away. It was pulling her toward a reality she wasn't ready to face. And that's when I knew the game had shifted. I wasn't going to sit back and let her make her own decision about us, not anymore. Eliza thought she had the upper hand, that she could walk away from this marriage and leave me with nothing but broken pieces of what we once were. But in reality, she was walking toward a cliff, blindfolded, and I wasn't about to let her go over it without making sure she knew exactly what she was leaving behind. It was late one night when I got the message. It was short, but it hit me with a force I wasn't expecting. "We need to talk," it read. Simple, to the point. But the timing, just when I thought I had her figured out, made it clear that she was trying to regain some control. She wanted the conversation to be on her terms, but I wasn't going to play by her rules anymore. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I let the message sit, like a smoldering ember waiting to ignite. This was the moment. This was the turning point. If she thought she could control this situation by pulling the strings, she was in for a rude awakening. The next evening, I walked into the living room and found Eliza sitting there, her arms crossed tightly against her chest, her eyes locked on the floor. The once vibrant woman I had married was now a shadow, the weight of the decision to leave hanging over her like a storm cloud. "Eliza," I said, my voice calm but carrying the weight of everything I had been feeling. "You wanted to talk?" She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she fidgeted with her hands, picking at an invisible piece of lint on her shirt. The silence stretched between us like an abyss, both of us avoiding the inevitable. Finally, she sighed, looking up at me with a mixture of frustration and sadness. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "about everything. About us. And I don't know if I can just walk away like this. But I also don't know what to do." Her words were soft, but they cut deep. She was looking for an answer from me, searching for something she could hold on to. But I wasn't going to give it to her. Not this time. I had been the one begging for answers for too long, and now it was her turn to face the consequences of her actions. She had asked for a divorce. She had created this distance. And now, she was asking me to fix it. But I wasn't the one who needed fixing. "You've already made your choice, Eliza," I said quietly. "You can't ask for space, then expect me to swoop in and make everything better. You want to fix this? You're going to have to figure it out yourself." She flinched, the sharpness of my words catching her off guard. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice trembling with emotion. "I mean," I said slowly, "that I'm not here to pick up the pieces of something you decided was broken. You've been pulling away for months, making excuses, convincing yourself that this was what you wanted. But you never thought about what it would feel like for me to watch you walk away. For me to feel like I was losing everything." There was a beat of silence before she responded, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't think it would be like this. I thought we could just move on. But now, I'm not sure." "Maybe that's your problem," I said, leaning in slightly, my voice lower now. "You don't know what you want. You keep changing your mind, pretending like you can fix things by yourself. But this isn't something you can fix alone, Eliza. It's not just about you anymore." Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of the woman I had once known, the woman I had loved. But that version of her was gone, and it hit me hard. She had made her choice. She had already walked away, and now she was realizing what that meant. "I don't know what to do anymore, Andy," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to fix this." I let the silence settle between us, the weight of her words sinking in. She wanted me to fix things, to make the impossible decision easy. But I had learned something over the past few weeks. I had learned that I couldn't be the one to save her anymore. And I wasn't going to be. "You can't fix it by asking me to do it for you," I said, my voice steady. "You need to decide what you want, Eliza. And if that means walking away, then you need to face that. But don't expect me to be here, waiting for you to make up your mind." She looked at me, the tears streaming down her face now. But there was no way to undo what had been done. The trust, the connection, it was all broken. And it wasn't something I could fix with a simple apology or a promise to change. "Goodbye, Eliza," I said softly, my words final. And with that, I turned and walked out of the room, leaving her there, staring after me. The following days were the hardest yet, not because I was struggling to cope, but because I could feel Eliza's desperation building. It wasn't the kind of desperation that screamed for help, the kind that demands attention. No, this was quieter, more insidious. It was a desperation born out of fear, the fear of realizing that she had pushed me too far, that she had finally made the one decision she couldn't undo. She didn't reach out right away. For a few days, there was no phone call, no text. It was as if she was giving me space to breathe, or perhaps she was waiting for me to come to her. I could almost hear her silent hope, that faint, desperate wish that I would walk through the door, tell her I was sorry, tell her that we could fix things. But I wasn't going to do that. Not anymore. Instead, I spent those days exactly as I had planned. I kept myself busy, focusing on work, picking up hobbies I had abandoned, reconnecting with old friends. I even started spending time with people Eliza had always found irritating. There was something liberating about the way her absence left me with more room to breathe, more room to be myself. I had forgotten what that felt like. But then, on the fourth day after I walked out of the living room, I received a message. It was from Eliza. Just a simple line. "Can we talk? I need to explain." I almost didn't reply. I almost let it sit there, letting her stew in the decision she had made. But something about the tone, the subtle desperation in the words, made me pause. She was unraveling. I could feel it in my bones. The woman who had been so sure of her choice was now questioning everything she had done. I replied, "I don't think there's much left to explain, Eliza." I let the words sit for a moment, letting the weight of them sink in. I wasn't going to make it easy for her. I wasn't going to jump at the opportunity to fix things. I knew she wanted me to chase her, to beg for her to come back, but that wasn't going to happen. Not this time. I waited for her response, but it didn't come right away. For the first time in a while, I felt a flicker of satisfaction. I wasn't the one chasing. I wasn't the one wondering what went wrong or searching for answers. I was at peace with the idea that Eliza was no longer my responsibility, and that felt freeing. The next morning, around 9 a.m., she showed up at the house unannounced. It wasn't the kind of visit I expected, but when I opened the door, there she stood, looking small and fragile, her face drawn and pale. "Eliza," I said, trying not to sound too surprised. "What's going on?" She didn't speak right away. Instead, she just looked at me, her eyes full of emotion. There was no anger this time, no bitterness. There was only regret, and maybe a little bit of fear. "I don't know what happened," she said quietly, her voice cracking. "I don't know when everything changed, but I can't stand feeling like this anymore. Like I've lost you for good." I stood in the doorway, watching her, not letting her see how much it pained me to see her like this. But I wasn't going to let myself feel sorry for her. I wasn't going to fall into that trap. "You asked for this, Eliza," I said firmly. "You made the decision to pull away. I didn't ask for this." I know, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I thought I could handle it. I thought I could walk away and be okay, but now I'm not okay. I didn't say anything for a moment. I just stood there, watching her. The woman I had loved, the woman who had built this life with me, was now standing in front of me, broken. It was hard to reconcile the woman she had become with the woman I had once known. You can't expect me to just pick up the pieces, Eliza, I said, my voice steady but cold. You made this choice. I didn't. I can't be the one to fix it. You're going to have to do that yourself. She stepped forward, reaching for my arm. I know I hurt you, Andy. I didn't mean to. I don't know where I went wrong. I thought I could get away, get some space, but I never thought it would hurt this much. I miss you. I miss us. I miss what we had. I looked at her hand on my arm for a moment before gently pulling away. It's too late for that, Eliza, I said, my heart pounding. You had your chance. And now, I'm not sure I can go back to the way things were. Her face crumbled then, her tears spilling over, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But I shook it off. She had made her choice. She had walked away first. I wasn't the one who needed to fix this anymore. Eliza, I said, my voice softer now, but firm, this isn't just about what you want. You've hurt me, and I can't just pretend everything's fine. We can't just go back to the way we were. You've taken something from me, and I'm not sure I can give it back. She stared at me, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to control her breath. So that's it, she asked, her voice small. We're done. I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, watching her, letting the weight of her own decision settle over her. I think it's best if we go our separate ways, Eliza, I finally said. We can't fix what's been broken. Her face crumpled again, and this time, I didn't try to comfort her. I couldn't. I had spent so long waiting for her to come around, and now that she had, it was too late. She took a step back, looking lost. I didn't mean to destroy everything, she whispered. I watched her for a long time before speaking again. You didn't destroy everything, Eliza. You just gave up on it. And with that, I closed the door. I didn't watch her walk away. I didn't need to. I had already made my decision. It wasn't until the door clicked shut behind Eliza that the full weight of what I had just done hit me. In the silence that followed, I stood still, my hand still on the door, my breath shallow. It was over. No more pretenses, no more waiting for her to figure things out. It was done. But even as the relief washed over me, there was something else. A gnawing feeling deep in my stomach. Was I making the right decision? Could I have handled this differently? These thoughts kept swirling in my head, but I shoved them down. I had spent so many months worrying about Eliza's feelings, her needs, trying to salvage something that, in hindsight, wasn't worth saving. She had made her choice when she asked for a divorce. I wasn't the one who had torn us apart. In the days that followed, things began to change, not just in my relationship with Eliza, but in the way I looked at the world. I started to feel lighter, freer in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I was finally allowing myself to breathe without the weight of her expectations and demands pressing down on me. But that's the thing about freedom, it's a double-edged sword. As soon as I started to feel at peace, I began to notice things I hadn't before. Things that made me question everything. The first thing I noticed was how much space I had. It wasn't just physical space, but emotional space too. No more waking up to her coldness. No more walking on eggshells around her, trying to avoid triggering her anger or frustration. It was all gone. The house felt different without her, and I couldn't decide if it was a welcome change or just a reminder of the life I had lost. The second thing that struck me was how much of my own life I had neglected. In the years we had been together, I had been so wrapped up in Eliza, trying to make her happy, trying to make our marriage work, that I had forgotten who I was. I hadn't realized how much I had abandoned my own desires, my own dreams, until now. I hadn't realized how much of myself I had given away. But now, with her gone, I had room to rediscover those parts of myself that I had let slip through my fingers. I started taking better care of myself. I worked out more. I started cooking meals for myself that I actually enjoyed instead of catering to her preferences. I spent more time with my friends, people I had neglected for far too long. I even picked up hobbies I had forgotten about, things I used to love before I became consumed by the demands of a failing marriage. It was like I was waking up from a long sleep, and the world outside had never looked so vivid, so alive. But then there was the third thing. The one thing I wasn't prepared for. Eliza started calling. At first, it was sporadic, just a text here and there, checking in, asking how I was. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't interested in rehashing the past, especially not after everything we had been through. But then, the calls became more frequent. The messages more desperate. She started saying things like, "I've made a mistake," or "I miss you." At first, I didn't believe her. I thought it was just guilt talking. But as the days went on, I began to notice something else in her messages, something I hadn't expected. Regret. Real, raw regret. I could tell she wasn't just reaching out because she wanted to fix things. She was reaching out because she was facing the consequences of her actions. She had walked away, thinking she could find something better, something easier, but now she was coming to terms with the fact that she had lost me for good. And as much as I wanted to turn my back on her and say, "You made your choice," there was still a part of me that wondered, was it too late for us? A part of me was tempted to answer her, to hear her out, to let her back in. But then I remembered all the years of silence, all the times I had begged her to care, to try harder. I remembered the coldness, the way she had pulled away from me, and how I had begged for her to come back. I wasn't that man anymore. One night, after yet another message from her, I decided to meet her. Not because I wanted to get back together, but because I needed closure. I had to see her one last time to make sure I wasn't making a mistake by moving on. I met her at a small cafe in the center of town. When she walked in, I barely recognized her. She had lost weight, her face pale and tired. She looked like she hadn't been sleeping, and I could tell she had been crying. But there was something else in her eyes, a deep sadness, an acceptance of the truth that she could no longer deny. She didn't say anything at first. She just sat across from me, her hands folded on the table, her eyes locked on mine. The silence between us was heavy, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt necessary. Finally, she spoke. "I don't know what I was thinking," she said, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "I thought I could just walk away from everything, that it would be easier. But now I realize how much I took you for granted, how much I pushed you away, and I don't know if I can ever make up for that." I listened, but I didn't speak right away. Part of me wanted to tell her how much she had hurt me, how much I had suffered in silence while she was off chasing her own version of happiness. But another part of me felt nothing. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was just emptiness. I wasn't angry with her anymore. I wasn't even sad. I was just done. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I finally said, my voice steady but firm. "But I think you need to understand something. This isn't about you anymore. It's about me. It's about what I want, what I need. And I can't keep waiting for you to figure it out." She looked at me, her eyes full of tears. "I'm sorry, Andy. I truly am. I've been lost, and I didn't know how to fix it." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if her apology meant anything anymore. "I know you're sorry, but it's too late for that. I've moved on. I have to." And with that, I walked away. I didn't look back. As I walked away from that cafe, a weight lifted off my shoulders. The silence in my mind was profound. It wasn't a feeling of victory, but something far deeper, peace. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. Free from the tension, free from the burden of waiting for something that wasn't meant to be. I had done what I needed to do, and now it was time for me to move forward. It wasn't easy at first. There were nights when I still thought about Eliza, about what we could have had, about the life we had built together. There were moments when I questioned whether I was making a mistake. But each day, as I focused on myself, I realized that the life I was building now was one I had wanted all along. A life where I wasn't living for someone else. A life where I was finally allowing myself to be the person I had buried for so long. Over the next few months, I kept my distance from Eliza. She continued to reach out, sending messages, leaving voicemails, trying to explain, but I didn't respond. It wasn't because I hated her or didn't care. It was because I needed to heal. I needed to rediscover who I was without her. I needed to rebuild the pieces of myself I had lost. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter. I just needed space, time, and the freedom to move on. And so I did. Slowly but surely, I began to change. I met new people. I dated again, not because I was looking for someone to replace her, but because I was learning to open myself up to new experiences. I started traveling again, doing things I hadn't done in years. I felt alive, truly alive, for the first time in a long time. Then, one day, I ran into Eliza. It was unexpected. I was at a park, enjoying a walk on a sunny afternoon, when I saw her standing by the bench, looking out at the lake. For a moment, I hesitated. I wasn't sure if I was ready to face her, but then I realized something. I didn't need to be afraid. I had already let go of the past. I walked over, and she turned at the sound of my footsteps. There was a moment of silence as we looked at each other, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It wasn't filled with regret or sorrow. It was calm, almost peaceful. "Hi," I said, offering a tentative smile. "Hi," she replied, her voice soft. She looked different, more grounded, more at peace with herself. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. About what happened. And about us." I nodded. "I think about it too, sometimes. But I've realized that we can't change the past. What happened, happened. And I think we both needed to learn from it." She smiled weakly, her eyes still a little sad, but more understanding now. "I'm sorry for everything. For how I treated you. For how I walked away when I should have stayed. You didn't deserve that." "You don't need to apologize anymore, Eliza," I said, my voice steady but warm. "I've moved on. And I'm okay with it. I'm happy, and I think you are too. That's what matters." She nodded, her expression softening. "I'm glad you're happy. I really am. And I hope you know, I'm happy for you. You deserve everything good that comes your way." We stood there for a while, just looking at each other. It wasn't a dramatic reunion. It wasn't a declaration of love or regret. It was just two people, accepting what had happened and understanding that it was time to move forward. "I'm glad we could meet here today," I said, feeling the weight of it all settle into a peaceful, final place. "I wish you the best, Eliza. Truly. And I wish you the best too, Andy," she replied, a genuine smile crossing her face. "Thank you for everything." And with that, we parted ways. Not with anger, not with sadness, just with a sense of closure that neither of us had expected to find. As I walked away from the park, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I wasn't looking back anymore. The past was behind me, and it was time to live fully in the present. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally on my own path. A path that was mine, and mine alone. I was no longer defined by the mistakes of the past or the choices of others. I was free. I was me. And that was all that mattered.